friends, welcome to this new video on the daily news analysis by Daily Shots. And in this video today we are going to decipher some of the relevant topics on UPSC perspective from the pages of editorial Oped International Economy from The Hindu. Come, let's go into the session. The script of disruption and a new order. In this article, the author explains the geopolitical and the geoeconomic nature of various countries across the globe and its fallout of COVID-19. So he points out that there is lowering of values, human values, and their conduct. There is also uncertainty of the world coming back to normal. He points out certain institutions like UNSC and the World Health Organization for its slow pace in dealing with the situation. Country like India with its forecast of the current fiscal year growth at 1.5 to 2.8 percentage of the GDP, and also losses of jobs are expected. So there is also on the positive note that the role of a state had been enhanced by the dominant imperatives on state becoming a normal, like the old legislation for Disaster Management Act becoming a new lease of life. So this type of instruments, power instruments, had been already being used in the authoritarian regimes of China. If we consider China, it has a centric multilateral globalization framework with a good manufacturing capabilities, and taking advantage of the present situation, it helps and supplies medical aids to various countries. So, but there is also an inherent danger of possibilities where China is taking the direct foreign FDI policies directly into the countries like India, Australia, and Germany. So China also dominates the councils like the RCEP and the Belt and Road Initiative, which is gaining a virtual economic and substantial stranglehold across the Asia. So the nations like France and the post-Brexit United Kingdom is actually out of race. So these are explained on the basis of the current nature of the current situation of the countries. So UK and the France is out of race. US had been compelled to cede the ground, and Europe and other Western countries are incapable of defining, and they are seen as insular. That means they are inward looking. So country in the current position defending in their own interest. Countries like the Middle East, namely Saudi and Iran, is also facing a oil price meltdown, but Israel has a position of advantage. And these oil prices also have some effects in our country, India. So, but basically there is a problem where there is a there is a reduction in the flow of foreign funds to India by the people who are staying abroad. So they are being repatriated back to the mother country. A quick fact check on the content which we have seen before on this article, naming the Disaster Management Act of 2005. So what is it all about? So this has come into force into India in January 2006. So this act is extended to whole of India. So basically this provides an effective management of disasters and other matters which is connected with it. So this act calls for the establishment of NDMA, which is a National Disaster Management Authority headed by the Prime Minister of India as a chairperson, and also it enjoins uh, by establishing the State Disaster Management Authority in the respective states of the country. And also the act enjoins the central government to constitute a committee, naming the National Executive Committee, to assist the national authority. India in the post-pandemic world. In this article, the author needs India as a country to mobilize the international cooperations as which is the need of the hour to deal with the current economic crisis, and also which determines its place in the future world. So it is currently concerned with the social and economic agitation which is underway in the country, and because of this, robust multilateralism and a leadership role of India is required for mobilizing the international cooperation. So India's role depends upon the quality of leadership, the quality of administration, and its framework at all levels in center, state, and district levels, the quality of the healthcare and other social services to the people. So there is also a negative effect which is compounding the economic distress with the age-old fault lines of caste, class, and creed, which are the negative points of this present current situations. So importantly, investment in a massive scale is required in the sectors of healthcare, education, and the social security in order to keep in mind they are the fundamental to our socio-economic transformation. So, India to be a part of multilateral and a regional or a bilateral relationships, finding a vaccine is a need of the hour, and those are to be ramped up with the higher capabilities and capacities in the country to produce it in the quantities which are needed. But basically, the question arises is, will we emerge as a part of the problem or as a part of solution? Second question, will we emerge weaker or stronger as a nation? Third, will we have been guided by divisive political agendas that deepen our fault lines? Fourth, or will we have worked towards an inclusive India that embraces all of us in its fold, regardless of the class, caste, and creed? So, these are the questions which are posed by the author in this article, Virtual Yet Open. This article deals with the current situation prevailing in the judicial process of using video conferencing as a method. So, the Supreme Court Bar Association had raised a question as to whether this current situation of the video conferencing will become a new normal after the post pandemic situation. For that, the Chief Justice of India, S.A. Bobde, emphasizes it as a virtual court of a distinct, as it is distinct from courts in Congression. 2 points in as a support to his argument is that it is maintaining a physical distancing, and there is a vital necessity to keep the courts open even during this national lockdown so that the access of justice is not denied to anyone. So there are also other points which the author points out, like making the video conferencing live streamed one so that the public, the litigants, and the lawyers concerned can access it easily without any limitations. And there is also a traveling issue which can be tackled by this method. So, with the usage of the technology, courts should consider other steps that will speed up the judicial processes, which reduces the courtroom crowding. Like the lower courts, the evidence could be recorded with the consent of parties by virtual means. And for the high court, system based on advanced submission of written briefs and allocations of time slots for oral arguments can be put in place. So recognize that the virtual hearing are no different from the open court conversation should be considered, provided the internet services are not limited, and this as an opportunity now for the judicial processes must be utilized very well. A policy roadmap to tackle COVID-19. So the author in this section um, explains or analyzes the interest of the each section of the society or each individuals are now coinciding, as the only one interest everyone has is flattening the curve of this COVID-19. So here in this article he provides mainly three important points which can address the minimize of the loss of life and restoring elements of economic and social life, including the aspects like health, education, food security, and other welfare livelihoods among the society. So the first point he mentions is the widespread testing and contact tracing is to be done in a large number and in a faster rate. But this would have to be continued indefinitely until a vaccine is developed. So there is a demand for the adequate improvement in the public health infrastructure, taking the Kerala state as the example. So the second point what the author emphasizes is that the policies must make a link between restoration and the economic output, and adequate investment is being required. And also it is the author is also asking the private firms to take part in this war, as it is being encouraged to contribute its available benefits so that it could be benefited for all. So this is recognizing the interdependence involved in fighting the disease. Third point, it's developing a smart design of policies which permits restoration of economic and social life. So, as an example, he points out a systematic collection of test results and other data to be used to manage restrictions so that they are local and temporary. So, other compensation and other useful things like providing them with financial stability and financial amount, and also providing them the essential goods at their home, and also residential facilities to support self isolation. So the resumption of the contacts, that means resuming the contacts across the nations by beginning with testing and quarantines of the visitors is to be done progressively. But at last, what the author emphasizes or points out is that it is feasible to bring the disease under control in one's own society through internal measures than to ensure its control everywhere, because it is likely to be impossible because of the war zones, the broken healthcare system, and other weak states. Lacking in transparency. So, this article explains how the citizens must keep themselves informed and push the government to adopt scientific methodologies and people oriented policies. So, in a recent survey with regards to the internal migrant workers, 42% did not even have a day's worth of rations left. So, being this case, the model suggests that there is an absence of other long-term measures. So, there is possibility of this epidemic could bounce back when the restrictions are eased. Also, as an additional point, the author points out that the World Health Organization declared public health emergency of international concern on January 30th. If the government had scaled up testing capabilities in February, lockdown could have been avoided with minimal damage, tells the author. So, this social catastrophe caused by the lockdown, a result of a failure of the timely response by the government, is what the author is about to tell. And also, the ICMR admitted that it was testing less than 30% of its capacity. So this actually raises a question whether it is motivated by the desire to keep the number of the reported infections low and suggests that the epidemic is in control. And also, independent analysts believe that the lockdown's role in reducing the number of cases in India has been of a smaller magnitude only. So there, the author emphasizes that the role of Indian people is very crucial. So they can contribute best to the country's battle by keeping ourselves informed and holding the government accountable and constantly pushing it to adopt policies that are scientific and people oriented. Hostage to obscurantism. So in this article, author explains how Pakistan's experience shows us why instrumentalizing religion is dangerous. Mullahs in the Pakistan defied government's order recently and insisted upon performing congregational prayers, which is a signal of obscurantist element in Pakistan. So these elements, including some religious parties and jihadist organization, which is planning and gaining ground politicality over the years. So amplified since General Zia ul Haq's program of Islamizing the country and Pakistan's anticipation in the Afghan Jihad in 1980s, it is argued that because of this changed the political culture of the country. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the peripheral Shia community from this community became the Quaid-e-Azam of predominantly Sunni Pakistan movement and viewed Islam as an instrumental term. So he was interested in creating a Muslim majority state devoid of Indian National Congress influence. So Pakistan's founders were not interested indeed in creating an Islamic theocracy. So pressured Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan included this in the objective resolution, which became the preamble to Pakistan's first constitution, that sovereignty belongs to Allah, who had delegated his authority to the state of Pakistan. So the slippery slope of Pakistan as ideological Islamic state started. So The linear development of from the objective resolution to Zia's Islamization is the slippery slope of Pakistan as an ideology of Islamic State, and the belief of jihadist element was encouraged also by the military. So the lessons from Pakistan Israel shows that the religious elements will end up defining the dominant ideology of the nation's polity. In a crisis here, Sri Lanka gears up for daunting debt repayment. So this article explains about the current debt amount which is getting due this year at the time where its foreign reserves are falling down. So this country is basically having an external debt ranging of $2.9 billion dollars, so which has drastically faced with falling foreign exchange reserves, and this country is mainly driven by the exports, remittance, and tourisms. These are the GDP increasing factors of the country. To boost its foreign exchange, it had made a 400 million currency swap with Reserve Bank of India. So, foreign debt is amounting around 42.6% of Sri Lanka's GDP in 2019, and to be in specific, it owes about $960 million to India, and a debt to China is $5 billion as of 2018. And next, the author points out the debt owed to the financial markets by the Sri Lanka is more than owed to the World Bank, IMF, and the bilateral lenders, including China, Japan, and India, cost around $1 billion. So it has owed a debt of $1 billion of international sovereign bond, which is maturing this year. So the author had pointed out some fundamental changes to be inculcated in its policy. So, like economists emphasizes a greater attention to the rural economy, agriculture, and a shift in needs from an urban bias in the policy. Brokers seek action against Templeton. So this issue is the continuation of the yesterday's issue on Franklin Templeton mutual funds winding up of 6 debt funds, which we saw yesterday. So here this issue is upon the brokers in the Association of National Exchange Members of India, an national body established in the year 1996 under the Indian Companies Act of 1956. So it has a membership of inclusion of all trading members like the NSE, BSE of India. So basically it is an assisting member in development of trade policies and legislative environment for the country. So the members of this association had asked for the strict action against the Franklin Templeton's mutual fund by appointing a high-powered committee to take over the management of the fund houses. So the members had written to the Ministry of Finance and the Security Exchange Board of India to safeguard the erosion of investors' wealth and get the investors' money in a time-bound manner. So basically the FTMF had invested heavily in a substantial price erosion in the low-rated papers in the debt market, is what claimed by the investors and brokers of the Franklin Templeton. So they say there is a violation of SEBI's regulation where long-dated securities with substantial investment had been made in low-rated papers is the real cause of this illiquidity. So this had caused the closure of 6 funds of FTMF. So in the statistical point, 64.7% of the total assets under management of Franklin India Low Duration Fund was in security rated as A or lower. In Franklin India Short Term Income Plan, such securities accounted for nearly 59% of total assets. So this article mainly explains why the situation had arisen and how and who are the members who had written to the Ministry of Finance and SEBI. RBI opens rupees 50,000 crore liquidity tap for mutual funds. So in this article, The author explains the RBI's move to sanction 50,000 crores to liquidate the mutual funds which are currently facing liquid crunch in the current economic situation. So this had been in a move to reduce the pressure that the fund houses are facing. So this is limited only to the high risk debt funds. So under the scheme, the RBI's repo rate operation for 90 days tenure is at the fixed repo rate, which means basically the repo rate is nothing but the interest rate at which the RBI lends the loan to the bank. So the 90 days tenure had been is at the same fixed rate, and now the bank meets the liquidity of the mutual funds by extending loans and undertaking the outright purchases or repos against the collateral of investment grade corporate bonds and the commercial papers, debentures and certificates of deposits held by the funds. So basically this moves comes from the previous Franklin Templeton mutual fund case where it had binded up its 6 debt funds. And that's all for today's news analysis, and I hope this video will help you to understand the major articles and other editorial sections of this paper. And the other news articles had been converted in the form of PDF, and the link had been given in the below description. Please do provide your comments and feedback. Thank you friends, stay home and stay safe.